Welcome to episode 6, where I break down the envelope system budget strategy and how I also talk about identifying every dollar and making sure that it has a place. With the envelope system, I break it down into categories: gas, grocery, household goods, and grooming. Grooming can include manicure, pedicures, haircut, wigs, weaves, etc. With your breaking down your dollars to make sure it has a designated place, it doesn't just mean it has to go towards debt or you have to be strict. It can be identified for stuff like clothing, stuff like family gifts, but you have to make sure that you put every dollar in a designated area so that when you spend your money, you're not clueless as to where it went. So stay tuned and I hope you listen in. Please visit our site at www.richstateofmind.com, where we provide content on real estate, personal finances, and self-development. Share your story and information by posting a blog on our site so that the Rich State of Mind community continues to grow in knowledge. You can also follow our Instagram page at rich_state brand to find out about exclusive offers and discount promotions for our apparel. So the big question, why should you budget? And it's to make sure that you monitor your spending, right? You want to be able to not live paycheck to paycheck. The average household is living paycheck to paycheck. They're living one step away from oblivion. And that's no fun no matter what household that you're in, no matter what lifestyle that you're in. You want to be able to have that peace of mind, knowing where your money goes and being able to track that. And so that's why I like the envelope system, because it allows me to put that money aside for my necessities, and then I use my every dollar has a place strategy to make sure that any money that's in my banking account is also identified as well. You want to be able to weed out all the bad spending. So I recommend taking your bank statements. If you use paperless, or still get it in the mail, look at that, break that down, look at your credit card statements, see what you're spending your money on. Some apps and some websites have graphs on, or like mint.com have graphs where it shows percentages based on what you're spending your money on. So like broken down like entertainment, food, groceries, travel, to see what you're doing with your money. Look at those bank statements and be honest with yourself. Do you need to spend as much money as you're spending on those clothes, on eating out, on entertainment, clubbing, concerts, whatever the case may be? You need to take a hard look and look at the difference between your needs and your wants. Ladies, I get it. You need to get your hair and your nails done, and you feel like you need that to survive. You look good, you feel good, right? But I want you to think about this. With my lady, she used to spend $700 a month between hair and nails. And I think a lot of y'all can relate to that. But we realize that spending $700 does not help towards what the final goal is. Paying off debt, financial stability or financial independence, things of that nature. So we had to minimize, her spending on hair and nails. And there's still creative ways you could go about it to make sure you still look good, still looking fly, but you have to make sure that you're not being excessive. Fellas, you got you got sneaker heads, got tons of Jordans. Do you need that to survive? If you got so many Jordans in your closet that it could pretty much buy you another car, then your priorities is in the wrong area. Shoot, if it's enough to buy a car, it's probably enough to put down on a house. So you have to think about those things. What are my priorities? What am I putting all my effort and time and really emphasis on where it should not be, and where do I need to shift that to? Because most of us, we don't get in weekly raise. Our income usually pretty much stays the same, unless it's annually, but throughout that year it's probably going to stay the same. So what changes are you going to do to ensure you maximize your budget to its full potential? Because it's not, a lot of times it's not how much you make, it's really how much you spend. You can be just fine, making 40 grand a year if you spend your money the right way. Now remember, this budget is to bring you down to zero. Not saying it will zero you out, your bank account out, but every dollar will have its name. And throughout the explanation, I will explain at what part you need to either break this down by two, the number that I come in with by two, or by four, based on those of you that may get paid weekly or bi-weekly. Now, these numbers may vary based on your household size or food preferences. For example, I shop at Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. So I know for me, my monthly budget of $300 for groceries cannot cover my household. And I know I like my lifestyle to be plant-based and organic and stuff like that. So it could be a little bit different for me as it is for you. The adjustments have to be pulled from entertainment or eating if I want to make sure or eating out, what I really meant, if I want to increase my food budget to make sure I eat healthy. Because like I was saying earlier, if my income is not going to increase anytime soon, some the money's got to come from somewhere. So I don't mind sacrificing eating out or maybe going to the movies if that means I'm going to have now mineral water, vice, acidic water. Those of you that are really health nerds, y'all know the importance of that. Please grab a pen and paper. And if you have any questions, you can DM me on Instagram at rich_invest_. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have after I finish explaining this breakdown. So I'm trying to do simple math throughout this breakdown. So I started with making $4,000 a month. And so the first thing I start off with, and I take off the top, is my rent or my slash mortgage. Now, Dave Ramsey suggests that you don't have more than 25% of your monthly income be your rent slash mortgage. So I put $4,000, 25% of $4,000 is $1,000. So I take $1,000 off rip. So I'm left with $3,000 left. Now keep in mind, I'm doing percentages, and I will also be doing numbers to keep track of how much I spend slash how much of what I spend goes to whatever particular category. So right now I have 25% that goes towards rent. So I got $3,000. Now I go to gas. Now these are the next few items I'm about to name out are the items that are in my envelope system because I want to take care of that first. I go to the bank, ATM, I take out that cash, put it in an envelope system. So my gas, I use 6% of my $4,000 towards gas. So that's $240 a month. I use 10% of my monthly income, which is $400 towards groceries. So that's $200 every 2 weeks. I use 2% of my income, which is $80 to household goods. And then I use 1.4%, which is $56 in grooming. So grooming, that can be haircuts, that could be pedicures. And then for household goods, I didn't break down that, but household goods is like toilet paper, napkins. It could be Windex, cleaning supplies, sponges. That's what I use my household goods for. And so also too, what I do is like kind of a treat to myself. If I don't spend all of my grocery money by the end of the paycheck, I'll spend on eating out. Or if I'm really motivated, I'll put it more towards debt or some type of item that I'm saving for later on. And so right now I have, after all my envelope system money has been put aside, I'm at 44.4% total of my envelope system. So between 44.4% and 25%, that puts me at 55% total. That puts me at 2,224 on necessities: rent, gas, groceries, household goods, grooming. I need that basically to survive, minus a couple other bills, which I'm about to add in right now. So you got your light bill. I put $100. So that's 2.5%. You have your internet. I put that $80. Like I said, this could vary. Light bill could vary as well. I'm big on switching off lights. So I try to keep my light bill as low as possible. If I got $80 light bill, I'm happy. But during the winter, hey, we turn up the heat, light bill could go up. Those of you that got a gas bill, you could put that in there. Everybody's got Netflix, so I put Netflix in there. That's $12.99. at least for the subscription I got. So that's 0.32% of $4,000 a month. Then I have a water bill. Those of you that own a home or an apartment that have water, I put $50. That's 1.25% of the $4,000. I have a car note, which is 300, and then that's 7.5% for car notes. You want to get that off your back as soon as possible. Since the average person has a car note, I put that up here. But the average car note is actually $500, not 300. I was just kind of being modest based off the fact of my monthly income right here is $4,000. So $300 is not killing me a month, but you want to get that off your back as soon as possible. Car insurance, I put $100, based off your age, based off of your driving record. That could vary. This is also, I would say, I'm also putting this for, let's say this is a single person. And so $100 is 2.5%. And then I have, in total, I have $1,581 left. And so that's after rent, gas, groceries, household goods, grooming, light, my internet, Netflix, my water bill, my car note, and my car insurance. Left with $1,581 a month. So now I am left with 39.53% left. So, and by the way, I think I misspoke. At the top, I had 55.6% left. Actually, not, that was a total of 55.6% when I calculated the rent, gas, groceries, household goods, and grooming. All right, so back, I'm at 1,581. That's how much I got left after I've taken care of pretty much the average things that most people in the household have and need. So this is the part where you could break it down, that number, by 2, which would be those of you that get paid bi-weekly, or this is where you could break this number down by 4, which is where those of you that get paid on a weekly basis. So I broke it down by 2, since most people get paid bi-weekly, which puts me at $790.50 left. So then I took out, I remembered I had a credit card, right? So I took off 100. And then I also put underneath that I put an extra 400 towards my debt, which I actually would want to do is make that twice. Because you want to do, I put 400 extra towards debt twice. So that's $800 a month I'm putting towards, say, my car note or towards my credit card. And that still leaves me with $290.50 every 2 weeks. Now I can use that $290 for whatever. And this is why I said this is probably for a single person budget. And so $290.50 for miscellaneous. That's if, hey, something comes up. Let's just say you have to get something for your friend's birthday, or come to find out now you got to spend, money on a car battery. That could be for anything, just to kind of get you by until you get paid again, because things come about. I'm a big believer in the fact that, what can happen will happen. So I think that having that in your back pocket, let that be your, just in case anything happens. It's not an emergency, but you got the money to take care of it at that moment. So after you finish everything, you write down all your bills and you see how much percent of your money goes towards your monthly income, or how much of whatever your bill is. Add them all up together and you see yourself in the negative. What if you're in the negative after you do all of this? Now that's when you got to look at your budget and see what you need to take away. So one of the biggest things and one of the first things that I mentioned was your rent / mortgage. Now, I know for a lot of households, this would be like a big, hell no as to downsizing, but that may be the first thing you may want to look at and do. If you're making $4,000 a month and your rent is $1,800 or $2,000 because you stay there because you like it, or maybe because you feel safe, you may want to look at a few things. If you have any spare bedrooms, maybe you might want to rent out that spare bedroom to kind of lower down your expenses and bring down your monthly rent / mortgage, as far as the percentage that it takes out of your paycheck, down to that 25%. Or you may want to, as soon as your lease is up, you downsize into a smaller apartment that you can afford, or maybe in a different area. And for a house, if it's so realistically, right, most people are going to try to make ends meet and maybe get an extra job to pay that mortgage off and to stay. But if it's too high where it's ridiculous and you see that you're drowning, let's say it's 50%, you make $4,000 a month, but it's $2,000, there's no way. I would recommend, and like I said, I know this would be a big bullet and probably a situation where you have to bite down on a belt because it'd be so painful, but you might want to sell your home. Or, like I said, be uncomfortable to make sure you can live comfortably and rent out one of your rooms. So that's one idea. I think that's a huge, I think, tip that would help you so that you can move forward towards saving what you need to save, paying off your debt. It's just a small sacrifice in the bigger scheme of things. I know it may be something right now where you're like, I'm not trying to do all that. I like my comfort zone, but acknowledge the fact that you have the income that you have. You may not be getting a raise, a significant enough raise to change your circumstances very quickly, but you are in control of minimizing your expenses to maximize the income that you're receiving right now. Also, gas. Do you drive around too much? There's a difference between only using your gas for what you really need it for, which would be really to and from work, to and from grocery store, to and from daycare to pick up your kids. Maybe if you got to go to a family member's house if it's an emergency, but outside of that, think about how much you drive around. Those of you that have cars that require premium gas, that's obviously a bit more expensive than regular, and that matters. And speaking of gas, what about your car note? Are you spending too much money on your car note? Like I said, the average car note is $500 a month, which is crazy. So for me, what I did to change my circumstance, because my income was not going to change within a week, what I did is I sold my Honda Civic, which was $366 a month car note, and I had enough. There was enough difference between what the car was worth and the balance to where I was able to sell it and had enough money to get a hoopty. And so therefore, I no longer owed the 10 grand that was left on it, and I was able to still get a $1,600 car and put a few repairs on it. So I decreased my debt because I had to spend about 3 grand on repairs for the new car, but I mean, still okay. After everything said and done, 4 grand. So I went from 10 grand to 4 grand. So I decreased my debt by $6,000. And so small sacrifice. Obviously, the Honda Civic was more aesthetically pleasing, but in the long run, that's what matters is my financial stability. So another sacrifice, and I know a big deal to people is their house and their car, but those two sacrifices right there change the dynamic of my household financially immensely. It gives me more flex room, more breathing room. You just gave yourself a raise by decreasing those expenses, and you didn't need to ask your boss for that raise. You did it yourself. You worked it out. Next thing, and this is kind of a smaller impact, but I don't like subscriptions. So, are you streaming too many services? Do you have Hulu? Do you have Netflix? Do you have Disney Plus? Do you have all those streaming services? I piggyback. So I have Netflix. I think I use somebody else's Disney Plus, and then I use somebody else's Hulu. But I think I only have one streaming service that I actually pay for. So I would recommend look at your streaming services. When it comes to groceries, like I said, it it varies based off your household, and I'm really big on health, so I don't mind increasing my grocery bill and taking away from something else. So like I don't mind if I'm gonna have fresh vegetables, and let's say that costs more expensive, and that means I can no longer have Disney Plus, then I'm not gonna have Disney Plus, or I'm not going to spend money on some clothes. I'm going to make sure I'm putting healthy food in my body. So when it comes to groceries, you got to really, I would say, be flexible and do a lot of research, because to make sure I still eat healthy but save money, I do shop at different grocery stores to get particular items. So like I get my water and my cereal from Trader Joe's, but I get my meat from Kroger's. And then I also get some vitamins, some of my protein stuff from Whole Foods. So you kind of got to, plug and play a little bit. I know the commissary has really cheap food, not cheap food, but cheap meat in comparison to other grocery stores. So I will look into, you kind of got to do your research and be creative to make sure you maximize that grocery budget, because you have to be on a budget. But I personally don't mind spending a little bit more on that to make sure I eat healthy. Uh, Household goods, just I would say be mindful of the usage, because toilet paper or paper towels, you don't want to get too crazy to that with that. I have a BJ's. I have a BJ's membership, so I can buy the in bulk toilet paper, in bulk paper towels, and so that helps over time, economically, to make sure I'm not spending too much with that. Personally, I ain't gonna lie with the grooming. So I talked about how when my lady, we, kind of mixed up and got creative on how much she spent, and but still, obviously, still always looking presentable. For me, I have, I think it's since I've probably been a second class, maybe no, since I've been a first class, I've always worked it in my budget where I do get a haircut every week to where I can sustain that. And so but I've set myself up like that, and it took me years to get there, because for years I did make sacrifices to make sure I paid off my debt. But those of you that have to, like I said, make some cuts, okay, you might have to look down your list when you wrote down your budget, and you may have to say, all right, I spend about $200 on grooming. Maybe it's time for me to probably learn how to cut my own hair or cut my own beard. So something to look into that. Water bill, light bill, you're gonna have to end up paying those two things, but you could try to make sure that you are not being excessive with it. Obviously, turn off the lights when you leave the house or leave a room. Make sure, for those of you that like to leave a TV on when you're asleep, turn the TV off. I know I've heard some people, they like to sleep to it. It kind of helps them go to sleep. But at the end of the day, I know what helps me sleep is knowing that my bill's gonna get paid. I'm not gonna be in the negative after I do my budget. Car insurance. I know there's some car insurance companies that give military discounts, give discounts because you've been with them forever, give discounts because you drive a particular car, give discounts because of what state you are in. So side note, I did learn. So I know a lot of us, right, when it comes to car insurances, a lot of us pick that $500 deductible, right? Because we don't want to pay a lot of money with the car insurance. I just learned, at least I'm with Geico. I just learned that it only increased my monthly payment by like $7, and I decreased my monthly deductible from $500 to 200. So those of us that end up having those emergencies, just a quick side note, you may want to look into that with your insurance provider, because I don't like paying that 500 deductible when stuff went bad, but I don't mind paying a $200 one if it means my premium only goes up maybe $7, $8 more extra a month. So just something to think about. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast because it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other outlets. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And thank you for listening. So after you've minimized or taken away as many things as possible on your budget breakdown, now it's time to look at your debt, right? So the two examples I had was the car note and the credit card. So you don't use that money that you just saved by maybe selling your car and getting a cheaper one, or maybe downsizing on your rent, or maybe taking away your subscriptions. You don't spend that extra money on buying more things that's not going to help you towards your financial freedom and towards you staying to a good budget. You take that extra money that you were spending, unless you was already in the negative, If you was in the negative and those things just put you down to being breaking even, then okay, cool. Those of you that's trying to expedite your financial freedom, trying to expedite you saving for a home, or trying to expedite paying off debt, take that extra money and put it towards that whatever debt that you may have, consumer debt. So we'll say credit card, we'll say car loan, pay that off. That is your most important thing to do. That should be everything that you are doing with your money that is extra should be going towards that, because the faster you pay off those items, the more money you have in your pocket. Goes back to what I said about your income not increasing on a daily, weekly, monthly rate. If you could pay off your car, and if you was going to make extra payments, and you see you did the math and you was going to be able to pay off your car in 9 months, and your car note was $300, like the example that I had, now you have an extra $300 in your pocket a month that you could put now towards the next debt. So let's say your next debt, which I have here is a credit card, is another $100. You pay that all the way off. Now you have $400 a month extra in your pockets that you're able to put down towards your home, put in savings for emergency fund. Once you pay off the debt, that's where the fun really happens. That's where you're able to be a lot more flex. And so I want you to kind of look at that and really make that your priority when it comes to breaking down this budget. Be honest with yourself when you're looking at this budget. Look at those statements and come to the realization that, okay, there's some changes I have to make. There's some life decisions I have to make in order to change my trajectory of my life. And I'm only hurting myself if I lie to myself saying that I can still sustain this lifestyle and still achieve the goals that I want. Now, those of you that like to live paycheck to paycheck, and what I mean by one step away from oblivion, I mean that if one bad thing happens and it causes you to have to spend money that you normally don't have to spend, you would end up not being able to pay for your rent or your gas or one of your utilities because you had to take care of that emergency. That's what I mean by one step away from oblivion. So I'm a big believer in having an emergency fund that will at least take care of your bills up to 6 months, 3 to 6 months. Um, there's a podcast that I listen to where, based off of the stability of your job, would be determine how many months of emergency fund that you have. So they said for those of us that are in the military, and we have contracts, most of us, right? So if for us, 3 months of emergency fund was the recommended, because unless I do something really stupid, I'm not getting kicked out the Navy. So my paycheck is pretty consistent. Those of us that have, let's just say, a contractor, if I have a contracting job and I build homes, and based off the housing market determines how active I am, and in my work, I may want to have 6 to 9 months of an emergency fund. So you want to look at those things to ensure that you are not living one step away from oblivion. And when you do this budget breakdown, you're able to knock out those things and still make sure that you have some in savings. So if you end up having a little bit of extra money left, like I said, I left $290.50 left over from miscellaneous. So if you can afford it, put $50 out of that $290 aside every paycheck to ensure that you are steadily increasing that emergency fund, because what can happen will happen. There's inconveniences that happen. It could be somebody got sick. It could be death in the family. It could be any type of emergency you could think of. Unfortunately, that's just the way of life, but you want to be prepared for it. And it starts with this budget. So I really hope that this helps. Like I said, if y'all have any questions, please make sure you DM me on Instagram at rich_invest_. I wanted to be able to provide people the opportunity to change their family tree. And what I mean by that is it starts with you. You could change your generations from here moving forward just by changing your mindset. You don't have to. People assume and think that because if they are going to be wealthy, they want to be rich. That's the goal, to be rich. You have to master the income that you have now so that when you do increase your income, you are able to take care of that even better. And so what you do is you take the money that you have, you find out how to amplify that money, and then you find out how to invest it. And that's how you make sure the next generation after you and then you figure out how to make sure that can be easily replicated. And so that's how you ensure the next generation continues to maintain that financial stability, that financial wealth. But it starts with you and your mentality. And you may think I only make 35, 40 grand a year, but you would be surprised how much damage you can do with making 35, 40 grand a year if you make sure you stick to the budget and you make sure that you learn to say no. You got to learn how to say no to yourself. You see a lot of stores where they have the I think it's Marshalls. I think it's Marshalls where every time I go in there, there's lanes of, you know, like nail clippers, little pocket toys that or gum or candy, anything that a kid would be like, "Oh, let me get that, let me get that." That's what they call it. It makes the seller or buyer impulse buy because it's right there and it's right before the cash register, right? But if you could get through there, get through those aisles or that line as you're walking through to the cash register, you could tell yourself no all the way up to the cash register. That's like the first step of being able to say no to yourself with impulse buying and making decisions that you will regret after the fact and be mad at yourself that you spent that money and have buyer's remorse on those particular items. And so those of you that have those all those shoes and you don't even wear them anymore. Maybe you should sell them. That would help you pay off your debt even faster. I know for me in my household, we found a bunch of old iPhones, found a bunch of Apple Watches, found a couple Apple Watches in the house, and a couple other electronics. And collectively, from the extra things that we had in the house, was able to raise about 10 grand to pay off debt and to pay off some other expenses. So you can make the budget sheet make it work just by either taking things away or you may be able to find things around in your household that can kind of lighten the blow on on what you regularly spend on so that you can survive. So if it's your car note and you found an Apple Watch, an iPhone, some type of electronic you don't use anymore, maybe there's a couch you don't use anymore, sell it. See what you can get for it to maybe knock down that car note, that credit card, or maybe that monthly payment that people have on their cell phones. That's another thing I forgot to add is a monthly payments on your cell phone. Pay that off in cash, or pay if you already have a monthly payment on it, go ahead and pay it off. It may be only $23, $27, but that's $27 that you can be putting towards the debt or something that would be more helpful towards your household. And it's okay to project out, right? So for my son Anthony, we already have a SAT tutors savings account. And it's just $5, but $5 times it's every paycheck. 5 times 2 is $10 a month times 12, and he times that by 7 when he's going to be 16 years old. Then yeah, it'll be enough money to where it didn't impact me enough or my budget enough to where, I can't afford it. And I'll be prepared when he takes his SAT and if he needs a tutor in math or in English, then I'll have that. If not, then I'll find something else to spend it on. Maybe spend it on, on a car for him, braces, project out, plan. Nothing outside of emergencies should be a surprise. There's no bills that you didn't sign up for yourself on. When people say, "Oh, this bill came out of nowhere." No, you just wasn't tracking it. And that's why I want you to make sure that you look at your bank statements so that there are no bills that came out of nowhere and surprise you. No automatic withdrawal or debt collection agencies should not be calling you and you're surprised about where this is coming from. Be honest with yourself, track everything, write it down, identify what you need to you can do without, what you can minimize, and what resources do you have within your household that can pay off some debt or lighten the blow. Do you have some trades? Do you have some skills that you're good at in order to bring maybe a little extra income in the house to sustain it, to sustain your lifestyle or to pay off your debt faster? Do not run yourself ragged, but these are some ideas to help out with making what's on paper a little bit more able to digest, because you may be bleeding slowly and not realizing it. A lot of people live off of their credit cards, and that's what I realized I was doing years ago. I This was when I was making eight. I was an E5 making $1,800 every 2 weeks, and then when I finally had did my budget and did the math, I realized I was living over what I was monthly making, and the only way I was surviving was the fact that I was using my credit card monthly. And so that was a big eye opener to me because, I thought I had it going on. I thought I had it figured out, but I really mathematically, I did not at all. And eventually, right, I was not going to be able to sustain that. Now, underways and deployments definitely saved me, which is, it's funny with us in the Navy. Like, we can't, some of us, if we're living paycheck to paycheck, oh man, we can't wait to have an underway, especially let it be 2 weeks so we could last into the next paycheck. It's the greatest thing ever. But those of us that are so either on shore duty or have jobs where we work in a building or on land every day, and we cannot run away from our expenses that we usually would if we were gone. You have to make sure that you be a good steward of your money, always track your spending, and always try to find a way to maybe make a little extra cash and plan for the future. So I hope that this was helpful. I really enjoy talking about this topic because I think it's the foundation of really changing your family tree and setting you and your family up for success and being able to have financial freedom, because that's the goal. At the end of the day, we don't want to work until we're dead, and if we do, it's because we enjoy what we're doing, not because we have to. And so this is where it starts. And this topic means a lot to me because of the fact of how much of an impact it makes on a family. It's it changes everything. It changes your children's mindsets, your significant others' mindsets, on how we think of how we look at money. You ever been told, you think money just grows on trees? We, especially kids, like have a tendency to just think like, oh, it's only $100, and you look at your budget sheet and you see how much you could really do with $100 right now, and your perspective kind of changes. So don't live off your credit card. Live off of your income. I know those of you that y'all like to use y'all's credit card for points. You got to have a lot of discipline when it comes to that. So don't play around with that unless you are really disciplined. I know credit score is a big deal, but I'm not a fan of consumer debt or using consumer credit unless it's like if you have a business, you have an LLC. But that should be the only reason why you're using your credit card, if you're getting your points, your frequent flyer miles, your gas points, stuff like that. um Got to have a huge discipline on that one. So that's all I have to say about this topic. If y'all have any questions about anything that I brought up, please let me know. I can go more in depth based off of person to person, situation to situation. I'm more than happy to talk about it and what I would do, what I think you should do, and how you could kind of meet in the middle. Because some things are maybe too strenuous and extreme based off everybody's situations. But don't use that as an excuse to stop you from being successful in this uh, explanation of the envelope system or the budget strategy. So, thank you for listening.